Hey, welcome back, and in this episode we are going to rough out a different style neck. Last time we built a neck out of a solid block of wood, and that was fine because it was our soprano ukulele, and that's the smallest ukulele we can make. And so the block of wood, even though it felt like it was the size of King Kong, it wasn't near as large as we would need if we were making, say, a cello or perhaps a guitar. So if we're going to make a bigger instrument, we're probably going to need to laminate our block of wood. There's a couple of different ways of doing that, but the way that I'm going to show you right now, I first learned from Irving Sloane's Making Musical Instruments, and this is what I've done on this instrument. It has a vertically laminated piece of wood. There's several layers of wood to make this block of wood be large enough. And so that's what we're going to be doing today. This one's been going a long time and is still going fine. This is the size piece of wood that we're going to make our tenor ukulele neck. This is a piece of maple. We're going to make our neck or our tenor ukulele out of it, and this is plenty of wood to do that. It's about 24 inches long and about 2 3/4 inches wide, and a standard 3/4 inch that you can buy at the at like Lowe's or Home Depot. So this makes it a lot easier. You don't have to go all over the countryside looking for your piece of wood. Now, if you look at the profile view on our plans, the profile view actually shows these vertical laminations with dotted lines, and that's more or less what we're going to be following. We're going to mark out our wood laminations with this square and a pencil, and then we're going to cut those laminations and use them to make a block of wood large enough to work with. So here's our first piece that we're going to cut off. Our second piece needs to be about the same thickness. Our third piece we're going to give a little more thickness just in case we need it to come around the corner. And then the last piece is going to be the most complicated because it's going to have an angled cut on it. Now, if I hold this piece up along the edge here, I can see that my angled cut begins right here and it ends right here. And for this type of instrument, this is enough precision for what we want to do. I am going to push this down just a little bit, hold the same angle, but I can always sand a little off and it's hard to sand more back on. So I'm going to give it just a little extra length, and that is going to be the cut that we are going to make. I don't know if you can see the line very well, but that's the cut we're going to make for our angled piece. We're going to cut here, 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 and here. And you're going to see that this 24-inch block of maple was way more than enough to build the instrument that we're getting ready to bend. Now, traditionally we would use a handsaw to do this, but I'm probably better with a bandsaw. As you've probably found out by now, I'm a power tool junkie. So we're going to cut this on the bandsaw, and then we'll trim it up on the sander to make it come out nicely. Get everything lined up perfectly. This is a very important cut. When we pull this piece apart, this is what forms the angle for our peg head. And we can join this peg head on the bottom, or we can join it on the top. I've planned to join it on the top because if you join it on the bottom, there's going to be a big spot, a joint that you see across the top of the peg head. Normally that's handled with an overlay, a piece of veneer that hides that joint, and that works quite well. But if we join it this way, you're only going to see the joint in the neck, and that's not going to look very bad at all. So that's where I'm going to join this particular neck. Now you'll also notice that my bandsawing, while I'm pretty good at the bandsaw, that's not a good enough angle or a clean enough cut to join. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put these two pieces together like this, and I'm going to take them over to the sander and sand them all in one pass to be perfectly flat. Traditionally you use a planer for that, but I like my power tools. So, over to the sander. got a perfectly smooth section across here, and now we're going to be ready to take and join the pieces of our neck. So we need to cut our 3 lines across here, and I'm back at the bandsaw. We could also use the chop saw for this, but I'm going to go ahead and cut those lines so I can laminate my neck. There we are, and it's very important when we assemble these pieces off of our neck that we assemble them in order in the same way that they went. That's going to allow the grain to line up as if it was one block of wood. So these are going to go across like this. You probably can't see the grain from here, but all the grain has the same curvature, so it looks like it all came out of one block of wood. And then this piece is going to be laminated. Kind of hard to figure out where in the world it goes when you're in this process. That's because I had it wrong. Good thing to dry fit all your pieces together. It's going to go like this. We're going to glue all these layers together. And I'm going to be using Titebond 3, which I have buy by the gallon and put in these little jars. You can also use other wood glues, or Elmer's Glue All is a good glue. But Titebond 3 works really well for me, so that's what I'm going to use. I've also got a chunk or a piece of paper that we're going to put down on my workbench because I don't want to glue my neck to my workbench. And we are just simply going to glue these blocks together. Keeping them in order. There we are. The last thing I need to do is I need to glue where this goes across here. My glue is going to begin here and move all the way down across here. Plenty of glue in place, no big problems here. Clamp to the edge of my workbench. Got glue squeezing out everywhere just the way we like it. It's easy to trim it off later on. If you're going to use a lot of sanding, you may want to trim it off while it's soft and not gum up your sandpaper with it. Now we have our glued up block drying, and we will see you tomorrow. Wow, that was a quick night. So we're back here again today, and we're going to take our neck out of the clamps. Just a little bit of glue on my paper, and here we have our Roughneck Blanc. From here on out, it's a lot like it was last time, where we're going to glue our paper onto it and cut it on the bandsaw. And I'll show you a couple of little shots, but we don't need to watch the whole thing. And there's our side pasted on. So we're at the bandsaw, we're ready to cut it out, and we're going to chew our way through this block relatively slowly. I mentioned that it's going to be relatively slowly, not because you have to listen for it to go relatively slowly, but when we show you the next style of neck with the horizontal laminations, it's going to be much quicker and easier for us to saw. But right now, let's saw. There is the side profile. So actually a couple of things I wanted to talk about while I did this, and one of those is a confusing statement I made last time while I was gluing this, where I said you didn't have to cut perfectly because the bandsaw would cut it. What I meant is you don't have to cut on the lines when you're cutting out your paper patterns, because the bandsaw will cut out your paper patterns just as well as it'll cut through a big old block of maple. In fact, it really doesn't care whether there's a single layer of paper there or not. The next thing that I want to make sure that I point out is you got to make sure that these blocks are aligned this direction. If they're not aligned this direction, we are in a world of hurt, and this is not going to work properly. But here we have our peg head, our profile set across here, and we are going to go ahead and cut the shape of the neck. Unfortunately, we don't have the handy dandy block that we had last time. Remember the block that we were able to set this on? And because we don't have that handy dandy block, it's going to be a little more difficult for us to cut that profile. So we're going to have to be pretty careful on the bandsaw when we cut. So we're ready to cut, and I'm going to have to support the work this direction as well as every other direction. Luckily, when I get down to the area of the peg head across here, it's not going to be as difficult to support because I want to make sure that I'm working in the proper direction here. I'm just going to allow this piece to travel along at whatever angle it does, knowing that it'll be at the same angle on both sides, and I'll be okay. But that's how I'm going to go ahead and cut out this peg head, or this neck. One side down. Lower my guard. And I personally like to extend this line straight across here because that's how I know where I'm cutting. This is correct for this side. And there we have our rough profile neck. I guess we can sandpaper off of this one as well, and I will, but you don't need to watch that this time. So I wanted to show you an extreme close-up of the neck so you could see how the vertical laminations compare. In the back we have our soprano cherry neck with no laminations, and in the front we have our maple tenor neck with its laminations. Look very carefully on the sides of the maple tenor neck and you can see the angled joint that we made. But you'll have to look very, very carefully. Here's the end grain, and remember that we stacked these all in the same order that we cut them off of the board, so the end grain looks almost like it's one solid piece. And here's our last view, and you can see the joint is up underneath where the fretboard is going to go, and no peg head overlay is required.